second part, he says, I lick the hands of those who give me something. I bark at those who don't give me anything. And I stick my teeth at the corrupt. And so he had a candle that lit always. That's a symbol of the search for authentic people, for authentic men who acts according to his wishes and not the demands of society. Of course, there's a problem with that, because if you do what you want and it's at the expense of other people, that is a problem. So when you live alone, it's not a problem, but when you live with others, ethical matters come up about where's the limits between my needs and the other person's needs. That's my comment. He says, happiness is, the people talk about, the common happiness is from boredom and the need to escape emotional unhappiness, lack of happiness, not emotional disturbance from seeking what is exciting and gives us sensual pleasure. And people live in a illusion that they're happy because that's what they're seeking. And if you don't live according to basic nature, the needs of nature, you can't be happy. The authentic man is the one who dares to oppose the ignorant masses who don't understand what is real life, because the masses are deep into their desires and are not able to think clearly. Common sense. What he would do, he would go in the middle of the day in Athens, the streets of Athens, holding a torch, a lit candle, and ask, people asked him, why are you doing that? He said, did anybody see a human being? When he came back from the bathhouse, people asked if the place was full. He said, full of people, but empty of human beings. He said that how he treated rich people, wealthy people. A wealthy person invited him to show all his beautiful things made out of gold, ivory. And the man warned him, do not spit on them. And he had to clear his throat. So he said, the only place that's not made out of... So then he wished to clear his throat and he spit at the face of the wealthy man. The man was very hurt, so Diogenes explained, the only place that's not made out of ivory and gold that I could spit at was your face. So a lot of wit there. He said that the world begins and ends in the existence of every human being, and science and all the intellectual activities are ignoring the needs of human beings. They don't have any meaning. Diogenes was agreed with this famous saying by Protagoras, the sophist, that man is the measurement of all things. And things are only meaningful when human beings are able to relate to them. He was very surprised with learned people that would research, Odysseus, that would ignore their own needs, on musicians that they are busy with their musical instruments but ignoring their own emotional needs. Mathematicians that are looking at the sun and the moon but don't see what's under their noses. On the people that are making big speeches about justice but never behave like that. There used to be, like, the history of theater, which I studied. There used to be Dionysus, that's the god of wine. Dionysius. And they used to have theater. The Greek theater was written, the plays were written for those festivals, celebrating the god of wine. And he would call that a puppet show for fools. In the marketplace, he saw an astronomer drawing the map of the stars and telling the people, those are wandering stars. Diogenes was upset and he said, no, the stars are not the ones that are going off course. It is the one who is watching. The ones who are watching you as if you are from the sky. Diogenes believed that man should focus only on the physical world he lives, and only that makes meaningful life. He saw religious rituals completely unnecessary and damaging to human beings because it has, like, this is a good example. I mean, do you really think they should be sitting in coffee shops? I mean, why not take them to universities at the same point? Take them to offices, because children belong in playgrounds. They're in a different developmental stage than human beings who gather in coffee shops to read newspapers, to have coffee. Anyway, that's a comment. Age appropriate is a very important sentence that's missing from the vocabulary here, and very disturbing to people who want to enjoy coffee shops. Okay, so let's talk about religion. He says that people who pray are praying for things that look good, but are not asking. They're not really asking for the really good things. When he says that people don't believe in earthly life and give hope in worlds that they don't nothing about, which I also think, they know nothing about the divine world, and then they put hopes in that. And a couple that sacrificed for the gods in hope they will have a child, he asked them, why don't you ask the gods what sort of child you want to have? Focus on the details. What do you want to have? One day when he saw two guards of the temple stopping a thief who tried to steal something from the temple, he said, two large thieves arresting a small thief. When he saw a man splashing water on himself to be pure, he said, poor creature, don't you know that the way the water splash are not going to cleanse you of your sins? That way they won't cleanse you from the nonsense that you do your entire life. Diogenes talked to leaders like they're equal. He had chutzpah, like nerve. Dealing with everybody as if they were equal to him. And he thought that nature did not divide human beings to more important and less important. I agree with him fully. All this nonsense about the royal families and whatever. Human beings are not divided into more important and less important. After a battle, Chaironia, where Macedonians beat the Greeks, Diogenes was arrested and he brought between Philippus, king of Macedonia, Macedonians, modern day Macedonia, right? He was brought in front of the Philippus, king of Macedonia, as a spy who came to see the greed. So after conquering Greece, Alexander the Macedonian, after he conquered Greece, he met Diogenes at the seashore, and he asked him, can I do something for you? Yes, answered Diogenes. Move aside and don't hide the sun. I'm Alexander the Great, he said, and I'm Diogenes the dog, he answered. I love that. One of the greatest contributions of Diogenes to Western civilization is the expression that he made. He said, I'm a citizen of the world. This was a very surprising comment because every person in Greek at the time belonged to a polis, a certain area. And that gave the person their identity. He wanted to say he is not a citizen of any Greek polis. His citizenship does not depend on a law. He doesn't live by any law. He sees the world divided into two communities, fools and wise. Himself he saw as belonging to the community of fools. That assumption led Diogenes to say that nothing belongs to a human being except his basic needs to survive. The world is the property of all its residents or citizens. Diogenes didn't think of the world not about cities or states. He understood that city and state are the condition for the survival of human beings, but he believed in the world where human beings are a creature that gets their identity not from a city, not from a state, but the way they live. Oh, what a beautiful idea. Diogenes lived after the golden age of democracy of Athens. He lived, after the golden age of the democracy in Athens. But even if he lived in that time, he didn't live at that time. He lived after the great golden age of democracy in Athens. But even if he had lived in that time, it's very doubtful whether he would have been for democracy, because he would have had then to believe in the institutions of the state and to accept the laws and to support the wars as a citizen of the polis. He would not agree with the opinion of the majority, because he saw the majority as the complete opposite of the right life. I agree fully. But then, yet, he wanted freedom of thought and speech without fear from the rulers. He wanted freedom of speech and thought without being threatened by the rulers. Very, very challenging these days in many countries, including this one. To call himself a dog had double meaning. Simple life, being satisfied with minimum of needs. On the other hand, a dog is a guard dog. Not only the law, but also the natural right of human beings to say whatever they wish to say. The second half of the 20th century has been it's typical. What's typical of the first half of the 20th century, I'm translating as I go. That's why I'm hesitating, if you were wondering. And that's why sometimes I make a little bit slight grammatical errors, so I apologize. The first half of the 20th century has had totalitarian regimes, as we know. And they were voted by the power of the majority, the masses, against the disappearance of the individual who was screaming for freedom of speech and freedom of thought. The figure of Diogenes walking in the streets of Athens at noontime with his torch lighting the way is very actual, or very we can see it's applicable today, because he's the guard dog of the free human being, and I totally agree with that. The problem is that the media a lot of times is expressing opinions of also ignorant masses. So the question is, media is also biased. So what is freedom of speech? Because a lot of times you read the newspaper and it doesn't really express freedom of speech of individuals. I think it's very vital to keep freedom of speech, and in any regime worth honoring and respecting. And it's good to be anxious and worried, but it's very good to remember that we are fools after all, and not to be able to laugh at ourselves. And I'd like to say that I think I like to have a law, a regime that respects the law, and sometimes strictly so, because I am concerned with violence against those who cannot protect themselves, whether it's children, women, people that are brainwashed by certain dogmas, and I think there's a need to protect them with the law. But sometimes the opposite occurs. Peace, light, and love to everybody, and keep your freedom of speech, but remember, not at the expense of abusing other people.